I mean, you can imagine. And that thing that you see on the left is the beginning of the restore technology under construction. So that's also the working environment that some of us delight in. And here it is, partly finished. You can see it's still under construction, but the plants have just been planted. You can see how long this is. This is almost 1 kilometer. It's the first, and if this is fully successful, we'll go 80 kilometers or roughly 56 miles of canals. But here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. It's coming clear and it doesn't stink. We're just beginning a similar kind of project in a river within the city of Curitiba in Brazil. That'll get underway in the next few months. What we'd like to do here eventually is to have these things be where the medicinal herbs are grown. And we'd also love the canals to eventually become places for the ancient Chinese polyculture, which is more sophisticated than most of us can manage to think about. And as an outgrowth of this water restoration work, we've created a global network of practitioners called the Water Stewards Network. And then there's architecture and ecology. This is a school. It's an unplugged school where inner city children in Canada are taught in the countryside. It's called the Boyne River School. It gets its energy from the sun and the wind. It gets its water from the sky, which it captures. It gets its heating and cooling by the presence of human beings inside it and good design. And as I say, it is completely unplugged. This is where the children for the first time are exposed under the escarpment to Native American studies for the first time. The kids go there for a couple of weeks. You step inside this school on the south side, and the first thing you see is this wonderful sculpture with marshes and ponds and these tall tanks. And what this is the sewage treatment plant for the school. So the kids are actually seeing the ecological transformations going on right before their eyes. There are the marshes on the left, and then the ponds. Here is a photograph of the rock sculptures inside the ponds which transform the sewage, which is then recycled. And on these are the mosses. And the children study mosses and begin to realize that these so-called lowly creatures are in fact extraordinary water purifiers, one of the best on the planet. The last thing I want to come to is a story about making new connections, new arrangements, new economies. It's the story about connecting entities that are normally apart. For example, in an ordinary industrial park, it's a cluster of businesses that really don't have much in common with each other except that they're businesses. In an eco-industrial park, one business will provide the input for another, and another business will provide some of the shaping or dominating factors. And so an eco-industrial park is in fact a new kind of an economy that doesn't have to be large to work, an economy that can be local and integrated to work in a world that is dominated by largeness. And What we are trying to do in Burlington, Vermont, is to create the country's first agricultural eco-industrial park. And I'm going to show you some of the pieces. The idea there is to bring together interested parties. These would be people like brewers. You always got to have a brewer around, in my view. And a bakery, and a sauce maker, and a soy company, because in the center of Burlington is the Intervale, which is an incubator of many, many, many farmers. In the heart of the city, they've devised a system where anybody with the right motivation can become a farmer. And therefore, to expand this idea from a summer activity to a year-round activity. And the other thing about the Eco Park here is the connections. And I'm just going to tell you about a few of them. First, in the background, that white building is a power station. That power station, wood-fired, throws its heat up in cooling towers. And the idea here is to use it as the heart of the agricultural eco park, and then to begin to build on the basis of its energy the various elements. And many of the food growing elements are being developed by ourselves at Ocean Arcs International. It's the food group that will fit into the eco park, which should be finished in about a year from now. But I'm going to show you the bits and pieces as we're assembling them. In the background there is an experimental wine vineyard, and then some research being done on strawberries. In the Intervale, about 1,400 species of edible plants are being evaluated by Shep Ogden. This is Gardner Supply, which is a tool company that's also part of the Intervale, which will also be integral to the Eco Park. These are some of the research gardens. And then in the background there is a tiny little greenhouse. And inside that greenhouse is, amongst other things, my son Jonathan, who's here now. The tanks are connected to create a solar warm water growing systems. And these tanks are connected together in closed loops. And inside these tanks, the water is purified that we grow fish, and in the whole process, the feeds are grown as part of the purification process. So it is an ecological sort of island within, and these are what they look like. These are the 4 cells with the fish living in only one. We went to the eelgrass community on the edge of the sea, one of the most productive communities in the world, and we said to it, what do you know that we have to know to grow fish ecologically and economically? What can you teach us? How do you do things? And that study resulted in this design. And it is them that we have to honor for that design. And there are the fish that come out very abundant, very energy efficient. They get about almost 50% of their foods internally, and the remaining come from outside. Then the last thing that I want to sort of tell you about is a whole new idea that we are working on, and that is the idea of taking really no or low value stuffs and using different forms of life, inserting it into this stuff and transforming it to something that becomes higher and higher and higher value. And what you're looking at is waste from a brewery. But we also do this with cow manure and other things. And this waste then is taken and blended with manures from an organic poultry operation. And then into that, we inject the spawn of mushrooms. And we do that inside these special chambers. And this stuff then gets put inside bags. And what happens is the spawn becomes the mycelia of the mushroom, and it grows itself through and transforms the waste into something that is very, very useful. It starts to create essential amino acids like lysine. And in fact, what it's doing is taking the base material and actually making it into highly valuable food, say for an animal. And along the way, because there's holes punched in these things, we're also producing a crop. In this case, you're looking at oyster mushrooms. So that not only is the base material valuable, it's cascading out the side, in this case, a crop. And then after several crops of mushrooms come out of that material that was in those bags, which wasn't worth anything when it started to speak of, that material is then put into these large bins. And after a period of a few weeks, the material is transformed one more time, and the crop that comes out of that is thousands and thousands of earthworms. And what we do with these earthworms is blend them with aquatic plants, these little floating plants like duckweed, and make feeds for our animals, including the fish. And so after that is done, and the earthworms are mostly removed, their eggs are left behind, by the way, then it goes into the next stage in the wintertime. And this material is a perfect medium for growing greens. And so all winter, when our local farmers are not growing these things, we're growing these crops on that same material that started out. So we're now at the fourth level or the fifth level of the cascade. In the spring, that material is bagged and sold as worm castings and worm composting. And the cycle repeats itself. And this allows us to begin to assemble the pieces of an agricultural sort of eco-park that is in fact cost-effective in an urban environment. Within 2 years, we predict that this kind of food production will be completely demonstrated. We've demonstrated it all at a pilot scale. Next year, we're demonstrated at a commercial pilot scale. And so the idea is to be able to take the things that we scarcely value, find the right kind of life forms to partner with, to transform them into things that everybody values. We're already beginning to think that some of the marginal farms could be in fact saved by having ancillary activities with perhaps new partnerships between new kind of agricultural entrepreneurs working, say, with the existing dairy farmers or other kinds of things. The scope is really limitless. What I want to end by saying is that everything that was said at the outset by Kenny is true. Also, I believe that we have enough knowledge at hand now to shrink the human footprint on this planet by 90%. I don't know if we can overcome the inertia that the dominant culture has. I can't answer. But I do feel sometime like a small little mammal in the late dinosaur age, kind of scurrying around these behemoths, creating a new world without their even noticing it. And I want to end by thanking all these incredible people who work with me. Thank you.